Imagine yourself waking up and living a normal life, and all of a sudden armed men come busting through your door, gathering you and your family into trucks being transported to camps in the United States without answering any questions. This is a possibility as organizations such as FEMA have gained more and more power throughout the years in efforts to build camps similar to the concentration camps. The following footage can happen to you and your family if FEMA continues to grow in power. What is FEMA? It stands for Federal Emergency Management Agency. Basically, they are responsible to giving aid to citizens affected by disasters. But the truth is, FEMA wastes billions of dollars on unoccupied camps rather than giving it to the citizens in need. According to Google Maps, there are over 600 unoccupied concentration camps by FEMA currently in the United States. You may be wondering why these camps are in our country. The truth is, these camps will be used in the future when the government issues martial law in the United States. This is how it would look if martial law was issued in our country today. How would you feel seeing troops walking by in your neighborhood? Would you feel safe, or would you feel like you're in danger? If you're still not convinced that FEMA is up to something, then take a look at this video. This will show that there are millions of death coffins just sitting there waiting to be used as the day comes when martial law is imposed and these death camps will be used and millions of people will be exterminated.
Okay, we're here in Madison, Georgia, looking for the famous FEMA coffins, CDC FEMA coffins. As you can see, they're stacked up everywhere. Windshield wipers. There it says private property.
Why is FEMA spending so much money on death coffins? Are they planning another genocide?
Just going to drive along here, show you how long these actually go. Except they're piled up about 15 high.
If you're still not convinced, let's see what happens when you Google one of the serial numbers of the death coffins being planned to use by FEMA. What would happen to all our freedoms if martial law is declared in the United States by our government just because of a possible threat or a disaster that takes place just like 9/11?
Martial law portions of Rex 84 were outlined in a 1982 memo written by FEMA Deputy John Brinkerhoff. Martial law was to be declared in the event of a national crisis, yet the plan did not define the term national crisis. The plan allowed FEMA to take control of both federal and state governments, appointing military commanders to replace duly elected officials. The plan also called for the rounding up of at least 21 million American Negroes for delivery to numerous military bases converted into prison centers, also known as FEMA relocation camps. Why? Because at that time, African Americans were classified as one of the largest threats to the continuity of the federal government. Who does the federal government consider the biggest threat these days? In 2001, following the attacks of September the 11th, our government again went into open roundup mode, detaining and imprisoning thousands of United States citizens, again seemingly based upon the same three criteria used to intern Japanese Americans: race prejudice, war hysteria, and a failure of political leadership. Let there be no argument. The United States government has put its own citizens in detention centers. The justifications for doing so range from personal prejudices based upon political and religious grounds to wartime frenzies and fears of future terrorist attacks. In a time of great crisis, the impossible becomes possible. Is it possible that internment camps are being built in the United States today? Is it possible that history will repeat itself?
Evidence shows that 9/11 was in fact a planned attack created by our government. Perhaps the motive behind this plan was to show what is in the future if another disaster in the United States occurs. Let's take a look at these few clips which prove to show 9/11 was a planned attack through detonations planted in the building prior to the attack.
Never before in the history of the world has a steel building collapsed due to fire.
I have not seen, until recently, a protected steel structure that has collapsed in a fire.
True infernos have raged hot and long in steel-framed buildings, but not one of the buildings ever came down. In 1975, the World Trade Center's North Tower suffered a nighttime fire that flamed for 3 hours, spreading vertically from floor to floor. It burned twice as long as the fires of 9/11 without even a hint of a building collapse. In February 2005, the Windsor Tower in Madrid, a skyscraper undergoing reconstruction, sustained a 20-hour fire. This is what was left, a standing building strong enough to support a crane. Compare a 20-hour inferno to 90 minutes of smoke. How and when does steel melt? Steel melts at temperatures of 2,750 degrees Fahrenheit and above, attained only in a blast furnace or when a powerful incendiary such as thermite is used. Steel or any substance that is burned will never become hotter than the temperature of the fire or heat applied to it.
A documentary on PBS shows that the reason why the World Trade Center had collapsed was because of a domino effect. Basically, they say that one of the floors fell on another floor, resulting in a complete destruction of the building.
Once the trusses fail, the floors they were holding cascade down with a force too great to be withstood. The result is what's called a progressive collapse, as each floor pancakes down onto the one below.
Can you guys see what's still there? The indestructible core in the World Trade Center is still standing according to the scientists. But why does PBS fail to explain the core completely being missing after the building had collapsed? Did the core magically disappear? Or was it destroyed by thermite bombs being planted in the building before the attack?
The official story's central thesis is based on heat, temperatures high enough to weaken steel. But people in the towers did not report such heat. Think about it. Neither steel, concrete, nor glass can burn. So what in those buildings could have burned to make such heat? How do these firefighters describe the collapse of the North Tower?
We started running, floor by floor, instead of popping out.
It was like, it was if they had detonated.
Yeah,
as if they were
detonated,
planned to
yeah.
take down a building. Boom, 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 boom.
All the way down. I was watching it.
Also, the World Trade Center had weakened its security weeks before the attack. Was this all a coincidence?
I know that on the weekend before there were power downs and there appear to have been evacuation drills going on throughout the previous week, which suggests that at least some people knew that something was happening. The power downs may represent a time window in which demolition charges would have been planted, although I think it's possible that they also were planted over a much longer period of time, given the relative accessibility of the buildings. Okay, that's all I have to say.
The following footage shows that our former president at that time knew about the attack.
And when he knew it. According to the official White House version, it was at this moment in a Florida classroom that Bush learned the second plane had hit the World Trade Center and that the U.S. was under attack. But here's what George Bush himself said almost 3 months later when asked about September 11th.
I was sitting outside the classroom waiting to go in, and I saw an airplane hit the tower the CD was obviously on, and I used to fly myself, and I said, well, there's one terrible pilot. And I said it must have been a horrible accident. but I was whisked off there and didn't have much time to think about it.
Now wait a minute. George Bush was told about the second plane while he was inside the classroom. So you just heard him describe seeing the first plane crash on television that day. But that's impossible. No one saw the first plane crash on TV on September the 11th because the videotape of it didn't surface until the next day. So how could George Bush have seen what he said he saw?
A video that was released recently, translated in English, shows that a politician in Iran has documents that prove the US supports terrorism and perhaps conducted it as well. These documents are obviously classified, so nobody knows what other information it could have.
We will prove to the whole world that America is the country that supports terrorism, and we have documents proving that. They will be sent to the UN in order to hold the US responsible in international courts.
It's time to wake up, America. How many more secrets will the government keep from us? When will the lies stop? Unfortunately, we cannot tell the future. All we can do is wait and see what happens. We need to stand up for our rights and stop organizations like FEMA from growing and enforcing martial law, resulting in another genocide. Is the government going to create another terrorist plot and blame a certain group? This is a possibility if the government wants to exterminate a certain group of people that they do not like. The evidence is clear. You can put the dots together and realize the government is planning something and plans on hiding it from us. Remember, the Holocaust happened to people just like us. They did not know a genocide was going on until people had started to disappear. This is a message from Nikki. It's time to stand tall and fight for our country.